Hello, everybody. I will just give it another minute, waiting for a few more people to join. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Hybrid Working in a Cloud Contact Center with Microsoft Teams. My name is Astrid Pocklington. I'm a marketing manager at Enghouse Interactive, and I will be your moderator for today. This webinar is a collaboration of our team here in the UK and our colleagues in Sweden. So we have a very international audience here today with many people joining us from the UK and the Nordics, but also from China, Switzerland, the UAE and the US. So a very warm welcome to all of you. Let me make a few housekeeping announcements first. This webinar will be recorded and we will send you the link to the recording afterwards. You can ask questions during the webinar via the chat functionality. In GoToWebinar, for those of you that are not that familiar with GoToWebinar, I will quickly show you how to do this. So if you click on the little orange button with the wide arrow, that will expand your control panel. And you simply have to scroll down to the questions area, type in your question, hit send, and then we can see your questions. We will allow time for questions at the end of the webinar. And don't worry if we don't have time to address all your questions today, we will follow up individually after the webinar. We will also be doing a couple of polls during the webinar to get your input and actively involve you in our discussion. The format of today's webinar will be that of a roundtable, a virtual roundtable if you want, with our panelists joining us via webcam. So I would like to introduce you to our panelists today, who are actually just as international as our audience. So firstly, I would like to say hello to Sweden and welcome Theodora Malmström, Customer Success Product Marketing Manager at Microsoft. Hello, Theodora. I hope you're well. It's very nice to have you. Perhaps you would like to introduce yourself and tell our audience a little bit about your responsibilities at Microsoft.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. So, hi everyone, my name is Theodora Malmström and I work as a Customer Success Product Marketing Manager. I think that you have to look far for a longer title. As a product marketing manager within customer success, my mission is to drive market share and consumption within Microsoft Teams here in Sweden. So the entire Sweden is my market. And I've been at Microsoft for about 5 years now. Time goes fast when you're having fun, right?
Thank you, Theodora. And next we have joining us from Houston, Ron Palinkas, Head of Customer Connect for the Americas at Hitachi ABB Power Grids. And I know most of you are familiar with the company, but for those of you that aren't, Hitachi ABB Power Grids is a global technology leader offering advanced digital grid solutions to utility industry and infrastructure customers across the world, and that includes nuclear, hydrogen and renewable energy, and also emerging areas such as sustainable mobility, smart cities, energy storage and data centers. So good morning to you, Ron.
Thank you, Astrid. And thank you, everybody, for asking me to attend today. As Astrid stated, my role in Customer Connect is regional manager for the Americas group. Of course, I'm complemented by teammates in both Europe as well as India. In fact, one of the team members is here today, so I'd like to ask Susan, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you, Ron. Well, hello, my name is Susan Orta. I'm based in San Luis Potosi, Mexico. I'm a customer service agent within Hitachi ABB Customer Connect. I started working with ABB 5 years ago, and I started as a customer support specialist for the US market. And well, now I provide customer support to people around the world. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you very much for the invite.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, Susan is a bit of a surprise guest, and I'm very happy that Susan was able to join us. And I'm sure as a contact center agent, Susan will be adding a bit of a different perspective to our discussion today. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us. And last but not least, I would like to introduce Jeremy Payne, our VP International Marketing here at Enghouse Interactive. Jeremy, please, could you tell our audience a little bit about Enghouse and what we do?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the first thing to say is thank you to what looks like nearly a couple of hundred people that have logged on today, and of course, you know, our thanks on behalf of Enghouse to Ron, Susan, and Theodora for taking the time out of their schedules, you know, to join the webinar today. You know, Enghouse, I think many people on the call are probably aware of who we are, but for those that aren't, the primary focus of Enghouse really is around customer interaction management, and that takes different forms these days. It could be a contact center, it could be voice, it can be digital through things like chat and AI and bots. But essentially, it's about providing organizations like Hitachi with the platforms and technologies and the process and training and skills in order to effectively interact with their customers in an efficient way. So that's it.
Brilliant, thanks, Jeremy. So without further ado, I would like to kick things off with our first poll. So let me launch this. I hope you can see the first question. We would like to know from you, have you recently moved agents to home working? If you could please select one of the following answers. Yes, all our agents are now working from home. Some of our agents are working from home. We are looking to move to a remote model, or none of our agents are working from home. Okay, still collecting responses. Okay. Okay, well, I will be closing the poll now so that we can take a look at the results. Right, handing over to our panel. Are you have you expected these results? Jeremy, maybe you would like to start. Are you surprised at all?
Well, I think what would have been really interesting was if we were able to go back in time and run this poll 12 months ago and see what the graph said, because, you know, I think 2020 was the year when really five years of evolution got compressed into 5 months. Many organizations had to rapidly move to the cloud, rapidly come up with a way for agents to work from home. So, you know, when you combine those two top kind of bars of, yes, all of our agents are working from home, or some or many are working from home, 96%. It's perhaps not a surprise, but what is interesting is it was an evolution. Lots of these things were already in flight. Companies, I think, were looking to move to the cloud. They were looking to come up with more flexible hybrid working practices. It's just in many ways the hand got forced a little bit through 2020.
Thank you, Jeremy. Now let's move on to our first question. With the increase of home working, the usage of Microsoft Teams seems to have exploded too. I recently read in an article that the number of daily users on the platform nearly tripled to 115 million between March and October last year, and most likely continued to rise since then. Theodora, how do you explain this huge uptake of Microsoft Teams in recent months?
Well, that is a great question, and I think that the growth of Microsoft Teams reflects the continued demand for Teams as the lifeline, if you will, for remote and hybrid work and learning during the pandemic, like helping people and organizations in every kind of industry to stay agile or resilient in this new type of work life for many. So when the pandemic first instigated a global shift to remote working, I would say that video conferencing emerged as an immediate solution to work from home restrictions, right? But as the initial era of remote everything has given way to more of a durable, in some cases hybrid models of work and learning, I think we have entered a new digital age that is completely transforming how we work and learn, both today, but I think we will see it continuously throughout the decade and at least the most recent years.
Thank you. Jeremy, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. A lot of the larger organizations that we work with, so people like Hitachi, larger global organizations, many of them were already using collaboration environments like Teams. And I think if you look at the way customer interaction management has evolved over the last 5 years, the introduction of bots and AI, user forums, social service, the ways for customers to get the answer themselves or get it through a bot or an automated mechanism has scaled up enormously. But what that means is the stuff that's left that the customer can't solve themselves, that typically ends up being quite complex. And quite often the people that are involved in fixing that problem aren't a contact center agent, or they're not exclusively a contact center agent. They could be people in the middle or back office. They could be third-party organizations. And those people kind of need a sandbox to play in, to fix the problem, to work on a single source of truth, one document, one customer case file, one email chat thread. So those kind of organizations that were dealing with either complex queries or were multinational, geographically dispersed, were already down this road. I think what Theodora said is absolutely true, that 2020 just kind of accelerated all of that, and now everyone's using it, because before, the conversation that could have happened at the water cooler or the coffee machine or over the shared desk divide, that's kind of gone. So the only way you can collaborate now is through IM and a collaboration environment of some description.
Yeah. And I think that as you say, that to connect, collaborate, and create in many ways in this kind of new way of work, we need an experience that goes so much far beyond video meetings and chat alone, right? Because the key to productivity is actually to move beyond the transactional meetings and focus on the flow of work. So everyone here, I hope, know that people don't just open Teams to join a meeting and then close it down when the meeting is over. They work in Teams all day. It should be at a place to exchange ideas, share information, and create human connections. Even though, as Jeremy said, it's hard to duplicate the kind of buzz over the coffee machine digitally, but this is also a tool to actually try to imitate this kind of human connections, and try at least to put on your video, look at the body language, how are you doing, kind of try to swap ideas and stuff like that in a more interactive way, at least.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. And I could imagine Susan or Ron, I mean, you're the ones using Teams in a contact center environment. Would you say what Theodora said resonates with you?
I would say 100%. I agree with Theodora and Jeremy. Certainly the pandemic caused workplace to evolve 5 years in probably the space of about 3 or 4 months. And I certainly agree with Theodora that sure, the initial issue was how are we going to conduct meetings now that we can't do it in person? So the first step was video conferencing, right? But then, you know, just as was stated before, where is the file that we're going to work on? Where are the pictures that we're going to work on? How can I stay in touch with you and have a record of the chat as we make changes to those documents? And that's really the advantage of Teams in that kind of environment, because it kind of pushes all those buttons. Susan?
Yeah, definitely Microsoft Teams brings us closer. And even if we put the pandemic aside, in my team, there are more than 45 people all around the world, and only 7 are in the same city that I am. If I just talk to 7 people that are in the same city, in the same office, the work dynamics, it's not going to work actually. So I need to be in contact with everybody, and definitely Teams is a perfect tool to maintain communication, share documents, information, and also strengthen the bond within my team.
Yeah, and I guess as the result of the earlier poll demonstrates, we've seen a massive shift to remote working. So do you see this trend continuing in the future? Jeremy, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt. I think there's probably a lot of finance directors and a lot of CEOs sat right now looking at their sort of profit and loss spreadsheet thinking, do you know what, this has been a great 12 months because we've saved a ton of money, and do we really need an office this big anymore? So I think people are going to be probably redeploying some of the money they were spending on an office lease over to, you know, beefing up their infrastructure so that people can work in a hybrid way. But one of the other sort of things that I think we've all spent probably more hours than we ideally should have or thought we would have on video calls over the last 12 months. And one of the things that I think we start to see in the contact center industry in particular, when you're serving a general public that who themselves are under a lot of pressure, you know, they may have been made redundant, they may have been furloughed, they're living in a house 24/7, 365 with people, you know, there's a lot of pressure on people. And unfortunately, some of that pressure cascades into the headsets of contact center agents. And if you think about how a contact center agent, you know, you could sense if you were a supervisor running a team that the person next to you is on a bad call or they're stressed, and you could make an intervention, go for a walk, get a coffee, cool the person down. That's much, much harder to do when everything's virtualized. So I think what you've seen over the last 12 months is the building blocks, the technology's there, and all of that kind of piece of the puzzle's working. But the softer part of it, how do you make sure the creative part of human interaction is there? Sometimes video calls can be transactional. How do you get that collaboration and you know, creative piece going? How do you make sure that the agent well-being is being considered? So I think we move on, you know, I guess like lockdown 3.0 or whatever, but we move on to another phase of things where it starts to get a little bit more sophisticated and refined. And some of that's technology, a lot of it is corporate policy and just the way that people interact with each other as well.
And I would say that, like, for us, we say that work is not a place you go to, it's something you do, right? And I think it's really important to support people's different needs, to be creative, to be able to focus, be able to be productive, but also collaborate with others and work in different places. So when we talk about remote working, we also need to talk about the importance that everyone feels included and can take part in all information and also share that kind of information, right? So it requires a great deal of curiosity and self-awareness from like all the employees. You as an employee need to know what environment do I need to do my job today? Because like the backbone of working is like various technical solutions, as you said, to be able to like participate in meetings at a distance, but also tools for communicating important company information or whatever. So I don't think that office is dead, but I think it will fill another role than we are used to. I think it will kind of like evolve. So many of us still have parts of the job that could benefits of so-called collaborative efficiency, which study shows benefits by like, you know, in-person meetings, physical workshop. So as we said before, also like the famous breakout room, no, sorry, not the Microsoft function, break rooms, coffee talk, where people, you know, swap tricks of the trade or other like buzz. We have seen that that is very, very hard to digitalize, and to shift to remote working is not only to just like send people home. You also have to like equip the leaders and managers with the right kind of knowledge and mindset to be able to support a workforce that they don't meet. So we have to have discussions like, how do I know my team is being productive even though I can't see them? And maybe in that case, for an example, not measuring hours, but impact could be a solution. And also ask the questions, as you said, Jeremy, and I think that's spot on. Like, how do I know if my team is well? Like, how are you instead of how is it going, kind of. I think that's super important.
Yeah, I think so too, Theodora. I like the point that you made about work is not something that we go to, but something that we do. And the last question that you raised about how do you know that your team is well, both mentally and physically. Ron, how is that handled within your team? And I mean, especially with the geographical distances between you, I mean, it's fair to say that you really are looking after a remote working team.
Well, it is a challenge, and just like Theodora said, there's no doubt that Microsoft Teams and other collaboration methods will allow you to accomplish work, right? But the real question, or at least the challenge from my point of view, has always been how to make sure that all those remote employees are effectively engaged. Right now, we had, I guess you'd say a preview of that challenge, in particular in the Americas team, where there are groups of employees that work by themselves and have not yet met in person another member of the team, say in Montreal versus San Luis Potosi, Mexico. So the real challenge, right, is although the person that's in that remote location by themselves might be accomplishing all the KPIs and doing everything that they're supposed to from a work perspective to be impactful at work, the question I ask myself, is that person fully engaged? And just like Susan had said, that Microsoft Teams does allow us to have some avenue for that. We have chat groups for each of the different regions, the Americas that I represent, but the other two regions have a casual chat and a global chat that hopefully starts driving some of that engagement from one region to another. Susan, would you like to add anything?
I think you've said it all, but I think one of the main things to know that everybody is doing well in general is like constant communication, and Teams allows that communication.
Absolutely. Ron and Susan, I think our audience is very keen to hear more about your first-hand experience. So I would like to address a few more questions to you guys in particular, but just to make sure that our audience is familiar with the project, I want to say a few introductory words. So following Hitachi's acquisition of ABB Power Grids back in 2018, you formed what you call a customer connect department to deliver post-sales around the SAN support. So as Susan mentioned earlier, your team consists of over 45 frontline agents and highly skilled solution engineers who answer calls 24/7, 365 days a year. So, and for that, you needed to find a solution that could flex to changing customer needs and achieve operational efficiency and visibility across the organization. So to deliver on those requirements, you went with Enghouse Interactive's Cloud Contact, and that solution integrates with Microsoft Teams and gives you that single unified contact center platform with queue routing, email customization, consolidated reporting, and also web chat facilities, all along with an integration into Salesforce for the 360-degree view of the customer. Now, Ron, you mentioned to me earlier that you were early adapters of Microsoft Teams, but tell us a little more about your motivations for moving to the cloud and for leveraging Microsoft and Enghouse.
Well, the journey really began back in when we were part of the ABB group. And I would like to give quick recognition to my manager, Carl Young, who at the very beginning was an early adopter of Microsoft Teams. So as we slowly made the transition to the joint venture, and in the joint venture, it was decided that the organization would adopt Teams as their collaboration software. I have to say that our team was well prepared because we had been using Microsoft Teams easily for 1 year prior to the switch being thrown for the entire organization. So that meant that we were able to start at the beginning of the joint venture immediately collaborating while some of our colleagues were learning how to use the system. So from a contact center point of view, the two main challenges that any global organization face are time zones and then also languages. So that is, unfortunately, it comes with the territory of a global organization. So the best way to make a very lean and very agile contact center group is to ensure that you have agents and engineers that work all over the world that cover customer incoming inquiries 24/7, 365. So the question is, you might need, let's say, for example, a representative in Montreal for French support in the Americas, but are there really enough inquiries in French to justify a full-time employee there? Using the collaboration software as well as the global queue from Enghouse allows us to be able to share that engineer's time between French-speaking inquiries, and of course he speaks English, so he can also take incoming inquiries in English. You know, one thing about our group that really holds it together, in addition to Microsoft Teams, Enghouse, and Salesforce, is the fact that every member of the team speaks English, and that's our common language for communication between unlike groups in different regions. So it's really the ability to timeshare resources across disciplines as well as languages and countries and regions that make the program successful.
Fantastic. So mainly the sharing of skills and languages all across the globe. Yeah, that's impressive. So how did you build the team and the coalition of support within your business?
Well, there was, of course, a strong mandate from the organization to put this system into place, and then it was work amongst the team and Carl Young to really take that vision of a worldwide contact center and translate it into smaller steps. So it seems that one day we just turned the switch on and we were supporting inquiries all over the world in all these different languages. But honestly, it really started country by country in each region, with each group taking responsibility both to train and educate our colleagues about what services we could provide. And of course, if you have a good system, right, and it makes sense for the organization, it's much easier to sell that to the end users and our colleagues. So it was a really the end of a long process to do it, but I have to say that it started with the determination of this is what the end result is, and dividing that project into smaller steps that allowed us to accomplish it. And the hard work, of course, of all the members of the team.
Yeah. So I guess we are all very interested to hear about the results of using Teams in the contact center. And I think, yeah, especially in regards to agent utilization, productivity, and motivation.
Well, Susan, would you like to discuss how we use Teams with, say, an inbound inquiry?
Yeah, sure. If I receive a call or an inquiry through Enghouse, we have a feature that I can directly call one of our company contacts with the phone or to the phone that they have listed on Teams. So we can easily transfer the call. We can easily leave a voice message. So it makes everything easier and faster. And that's, I think, the main objective, like to solve inquiries as good and as fast as possible. So yeah, after the learning curve is reached, you can really see its potential.
So
I think.
I'm sorry, Susan.
No problem. I think that these two tools have greatly improved communication, trust within our group, and also a better customer support. It has helped us to provide a better customer support.
That sounds great. I'm sure your customers are very happy to hear that. Ron, would you like to add anything?
Oh, just mechanically how it works. You know, of course, we've all called into a number to ask to speak with someone, or not necessarily someone, but someone who's in charge of a product or who's going to help us solve a problem, and placed on hold while they contact that person to see if they're available. With the connector between Teams and Enghouse, the agents and engineers that are taking those inquiries can see the status of that person internally to see if they're online or not. And then rather than putting someone on hold, they can continue to gather information while they either chat or message with that person. So it's really a great feature that bridges the gap between Enghouse and the organization.
Fantastic. And I guess what you mentioned earlier about having that unified contact center platform that allows you to optimally utilize your agents across the globe. So you have the absolute visibility over who's available and who's busy at any point in time.
Right. Correct.
Okay, so do you have any tips for our audience for running a transformational project like this? Any lessons that you have learned in the process, and maybe you have advice that you would like to share with our audience today?
Well, it's really project management at its purest form, right? You have to go through the steps, which is first figure out what the delivery date is, and then work backwards from that to see what parts of the project need to happen at what certain rate. Our quick adoption of Enghouse on a very compressed timeline was the result of a huge amount of people, both within our organization as well as Enghouse, that spans from IT to purchasing to security folks and members of what Susan and her colleagues call the Enghouse pilot team, who spent a great deal of time making sure that all the features worked. One of the advantages of being part of an organization that runs 24 hours, 7 days a week, is that if we're smart about how we plan projects and how we monitor them, teams being a big part of that, we can really get 3 days of testing and 3 days worth of work done in a 24-hour period, because our 3 regions are separated by their time zone. So as the United States, or excuse me, the Americas is going offline, India is starting their day. And then about towards the end of India's day, the Europe team comes online. So if you're smart about planning the project out and working on what needs to be done overnight in each one of those regions, you can really speed up the timeline. And that's a testament to the team as well as Microsoft teams in helping us accomplish that.
Excellent. What does the future look like for Hitachi ABB Power Grids? What are your next aspirations? Any plans that you can talk about?
You know, customer service in the context of a contact center, there's always ways to improve, right? There's always time between the inquiry and the resolution that can be compressed to improve customer service. We can respond to a wider number of inputs from customer, whether it be social media or text messages or anything like that. It's really, you know, just as I think Jeremy stated, customer, just like working from home, customer service has accelerated during this period because people are at home more and less patient, you know, for waiting for answers. I think we're all like that as consumers. So what I think the future holds with Hitachi ABB Power Grids is an increased role for the customer contact center in the organization, as well as more channels for customers to connect with us.
What kind of channels are you thinking about?
Well, social media, I think, is probably the next step. There are even within the past 2 years, the way that customers contact support lines has changed dramatically. It used to be telephone, and at least in the Americas, we've seen a shift now to email. And I'm kind of interested to see what the next avenue is. Will it be chat? Will it be social media like Twitter or something like that? I really don't know. I think the public's going to dictate, and our customers are going to dictate which way that goes.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Ron and Susan, for your insights. That was really, really valuable feedback. So before we move on, let's ask our audience for their views again. Let me launch the next poll. The question that we would like to ask you is, what aspects of remote or hybrid working are you looking at improving the most? So if you could please select one of the following answers: visibility and quality control, tools and technology, security, or agent well-being and motivation. Okay, I'll give you another few seconds to allow everybody to cast their vote. Okay, let's close the poll and view the results. Okay, I'm sharing the results with you now, and yeah, I would like to ask our panelists, would you like to comment on the results?
Well, I'll kick things off. I mean, I think it's probably inevitable, given the pace of change that we talked about through the last, well, it's not even 12 months, the last 9 months since the pandemic kicked in, that people are still in that phase of, you know, tools and technology, trying to get the right things in place. What's really encouraging out of that is just the number of people that have clicked the agent wellbeing and motivation option, because I think that's something, certainly at the start of the pandemic, that was something that was just stepped over really in the frantic scramble to, you know, operationalize a business, you know, remotely. That kind of got missed off, and I think that is definitely moving up the agenda now. I think as well as a lot of people last year just kind of glued together whatever technologies they could kind of find. Security was also an area that was a little bit neglected, and I think through 2021 that will be something that people start to pay a lot more attention to.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to add anything to the result of this second poll?
Well, I think that it started out with the pandemic. How do we get functional as quickly as possible? The work from home was, although our organization had a little bit of an introduction to it, it was a quick move to make sure that we could at least carry on the organization's mission fully from home. And so I think it started with tools and the necessities of carrying on the work of business. But I am also encouraged to see that more and more people are looking at the well-being aspect of people working from home. As I said, we're used to having a very distributed, separate team. So although we were used to going to offices in most cases, it's been a big change for us. And I think that we've seen an evolution in emphasis on well-being, motivation, and in particular self-care since we began. I think that probably if you consider the start of the pandemic in the February timeframe, I think that it was about security and network tools for the first month or two. And then I think as we all prepared for the longer haul with the pandemic, we all started to take a look and say, is this level of work, this activity that I'm doing, is it really sustainable long term? And that's the well-being aspect.
Yeah, Theodora, you were nodding there. Would you like to add anything?
Not really. I can just agree with both Jeremy and Ron that I was surprised, but happily surprised that well-being was such a big focus for at least this group of listeners to for the next step. Of course, I think that it was Jeremy who said that he believes that security will come up, and I do believe that as well. Like, we had such a rush, kind of, all the companies to get the tools out to be able to enable all the workers, and now we also see like the effects of that, as in people maybe having trouble working from home, maybe feeling a bit less motivated at home, or having other kind of I don't know, life is a bit harder nowadays when you can't meet your loved ones sometimes, and that's something that's affecting the work life as well, since of course the work and private life is very much more intertwined today than it used to be. But I also think that like we are getting there. We're trying. Hopefully, we will see an end to the pandemic pretty soon. Fingers crossed, at least. And I think that most organizations will kind of do some kind of hybrid work type. And I think back, like then they will also like discover that maybe we need to look at the security side of things again. We have regulations such as GDPR, Cloud Act. We have big cases like Schrems 2, which is a huge, how do you say, like it's a huge obstacle, and most organizations don't know how to kind of handle these kind of things, but we must handle them, and therefore I think there will be a lot more focus on security in the future. But hopefully people are smart enough and do as Ron did, that they kind of like backtrack what they do and do some all the things like parallel. We are doing the technology part, like the rolling out the technology together with putting the change, like the human, the work force change, to like get everyone on board. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Why is this important? Blah, blah, blah. And then also do the security change, like, you know, in a common way to like get all these three different aspects on board.
Yeah, I think you all made some valid points there. For example, saying that initially it was all about ensuring business continuity, but now that the pandemic seems to last for such a long time, there are a lot of other aspects to consider as well, which leads me to my next question, and I'm very curious to hear your opinions on this. It seems to me that many organizations simply try to replicate what was previously done in the office in a virtual environment now. Is this really the optimal way to operate in the new normal? What do you think? Jeremy, perhaps?
Yeah, well, I mean, Enghouse has long kind of advocated to people to follow a digital by design approach. There's very few companies. If you think about a low-cost airline, when you deal with a low-cost airline, they have a digital by default process, and everything is geared up so that you don't have an awful lot of human interaction in that customer service. But most organizations aren't structured like that. Their customer base isn't structured like that. And it's not going to be the right approach for them. So we would say take a digital by design approach. You know, pick your top 5 journeys that drive most of your revenue, the top 5 journeys that drive most cost, and the top 5 journeys that cause or have the most regulatory risk or exposure, and optimize those first, and think about how you use automation, AI, customer kind of service, social service, and the human element, and build up what does the optimal journey look like, and then map the resources that you have to that optimal picture. And the thing that's interesting, when we normally go into a company, it's a little bit like a jigsaw puzzle, and most companies already have about 80% of the pieces they need. They just haven't got them glued together in the right way. Quite often this isn't a case of rip and replace and a whole new technology stack. Normally it's about optimizing a lot of what you've already got.
Okay.
Sorry, I jump in right in.
Please do.
But I think that like the optimal way, I would say that change seems to be the new normal. Like I think that we all can agree on that. And innovative companies and organizations that offer a modern way of working, regardless of time and space, are more productive, they are more profitable and more competitive than others. So they also have like a greater opportunity to attract competent employees, for an example, which is a must at the time when competition for both customers and competent employees is tougher than like ever before, I would say. Very dramatic. And in innovative companies where employees tend to stay longer and management works actively to increase collaboration between employees throughout the organization, they are also characterized by continuous change in order to adapt to external changes and to stay ahead of competition. So to meet these changes, the organization must have a culture in place that is characterized by, as I said a little bit before, curiosity, constant learning, and like openness to different ideas. And At the same time, a continuous change process must be established where employees are given the ability to use tools to facilitate these collaboration, information sharing, and communication, both within and outside the organization. So this with the goal of kind of streamlining operations and creating space for idea exchange and development, all to make the business more competitive. So when the tools make it easy for employees to collaborate and start from the same data and conditions as their colleagues, not only is productivity increased, I think that digital stress is also declining. So with modern collaboration tools and like a modern way of working, there are conditions for a prosperous organization where current employees stay and develop, and I also think that new talent is attracted, but this does not happen like by itself, right? So by creating a culture that encourage reflection and database insight, we can change individual behaviors and create a more prosperous organization over time, and all these kind of like conditions for a long-term sustainable working life for the individual, I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we have time for one more question before I will read out a couple of questions from the audience. When it comes to the customer experience, do you think customer preferences, attitudes, and behaviors have changed due to the pandemic, and how should organizations respond adequately to those changes? Jeremy, would you like to go first, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably two variables. We touched on one earlier, which was just the level of stress that a lot of the general public feel right now. And I think probably a lot of the stress that contact center and customer service agents feel right now. And it's interesting, we see technologies that we have as a company, technologies like real-time speech analytics, that lots of companies were using to understand and in real time the stress level within their customer. They now have that sort of bi-directionally, so it's testing the stress level, it's measuring like 20-30 variables on a call at any given point, but also measuring the stress level within the agent and creating a real-time trigger or flag to a supervisor. So we see stuff like that going on. The other piece that's interesting, so if you imagine, you know, like a clothes retailer and 80% of their business was through a physical store and 20% was online, and suddenly now in the last 6-9 months, it's flipped around and nearly all of the business is online. The customer's expectation is, because you're interacting with them online, that you know everything about them. If this is a digital transaction, you should know what the last order I did with you was. You should know I called you. You should know I posted this in the chat. So Ron was talking about, you know, omni-channel interaction and social media and stuff. Customers have an expectation that, you know, when you introduce new channels, that they're all joined up. So if I started an interaction with you by email and then I moved on to chat and then I picked up the phone, you should have that thread in one place. I shouldn't, as a customer, have to go back to the start and repeat everything again. So customers' expectations, unfortunately, have gone up a lot, you know, in the last 9 months as well. So I think a lot of organizations are playing catch up on that front as well.
Thanks, Jeremy. I would like to read out a couple of questions from the audience that we received. So the first question I would like to ask is, how would you measure customer satisfaction with respect to work at home versus, I presume that meant work in the office sessions? Maybe Ron or Jeremy?
Well, I guess, and I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but I think that the idea is that whether the agent or engineer is at home or at the office should be invisible to the customer, right? That would be the hope. Now, we all know that life occasionally intrudes, right? Whether it's the dog barking or something like that. And I think that customers are probably more receptive to that now, obviously, than they were in the past. But I think the measures of customer satisfaction are the same. Jeremy has an excellent point that I think the standards are the expectations of customers are increasing, and it's the responsibility of the business to deliver that.
Absolutely. Would anybody else like to add to it, or shall I move on with the next question? I'll move on then. What is the sense of how tools such as Teams and Enghouse have impacted our collaboration in global organizations and our ability to be more dynamic and flexible? Jeremy?
Well, I think, you know, it's a lot of what Ron and Susan talked about. You know, they're the guys really on the front line. What is clear is, I think one of the things that you see when you're using a collaboration environment like Teams in conjunction with a customer interaction platform like Enghouse is the speed at which you can get back to what the customer wants. And really what the customer wants is the fastest answer to their question or problem with the least amount of input of time and effort from themselves. And when you've got a collaboration environment, so Ron and Susan talked about presence, the ability to see who within your organization is available right now online with the skills to help solve this customer's problem. So that means you can fold that person in to a conversation in real time. You're not asking for the customer to sit on hold for 10 minutes while you rummage around trying to interrogate a system or find a customer file or find someone that can help or go ask a supervisor. It's there in real time immediately. And so I think that ability to patch people in with specific skill sets at the specifically right moment is probably the biggest win in terms of customer service.
Thanks, Jeremy. In the interest of time, I would like to stop the questions here. We had a couple more technical questions, and let me reassure you that we definitely get back to you on all your inquiries and follow up with you all individually after the webinar. I would like to launch our last poll now and ask you one final question. If you could please let us know if you're interested in integrating your contact center with Microsoft Teams within the next 12 months, please, if you could select your appropriate answer. Okay. I'll wait another few seconds. And I'll close this and yeah, we've unfortunately reached the end of our discussion today. So if you are interested in more information around hybrid working and choosing the right technology to support your business needs, or if you would like to find out more about integrating with Microsoft Teams, we have a lot of resources available on our website, both the Swedish and the UK side. The URLs you can see here, and also 3 examples of some materials that we have available for you to download. I would also like to draw your attention to a new webinar series that we are currently planning. This is a Microsoft Teams Tech Clinic. There will be small interactive sessions where we answer questions from the audience. These questions will be mainly focused on technical aspects such as integration and so on. So the first session is planned for the 11th of March, and we'll look at how does an Enghouse contact center with Microsoft Teams work. The second session is planned for the 6th of May, and we will be looking at things to consider when migrating your contact center to Microsoft Teams. And the third session is scheduled at the moment for the 10th of June, where we will be discussing the future of an omni-channel contact center with Microsoft Teams. Our Swedish colleagues are planning a similar Microsoft Teams tech clinic, and for both of these webinar series, more information will be shared very soon, and also the ability to register for those sessions. And Theodora has also asked me to make you all aware that there is a webinar in Swedish happening on the 25th of February. So in particular for our Swedish audience, if you are interested in participating, the link to the webinar series and the ability to register is displayed here, but we will also include this information in our follow-up email. Theodora, I don't know if you wanted to say a little bit more about this webinar.
I think you said it all. Just please go into aka.ms/mer-i-teams to read more about the event.
Fantastic, thank you. Right, well, we reached the end of our session. I would like to thank our panelists for this interesting and engaging discussion. I hope you, our audience, found it interesting and you enjoyed the last hour. Have a good day. Until next time, goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.